You are listening to Never Stumped, the Adaptive OCR Podcast. Pushing limits, breaking barriers for all, the Adaptive OCR experience.
Hello, and welcome to the second edition of Never Stumped, the Adaptive OCR Podcast. I'm really excited today to be joined by Jo Dulson-Cox, who is an incredible person, both in the community and outside of the community. One of our BOSS Honorary Life members. Hello, welcome.
Hello, welcome. Thank you, Jamie, for inviting me along. It's very exciting to have been invited to a very early edition of your podcast. So it's good.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's one of those things where before I started the podcast, I had a list of people that I wanted to talk to, and you were sort of high on that list. So I'm honoured that you've joined us for our second edition. I really want to talk about two different things in today's podcast. We're going to try and slam everything together. Because not only are you one of our incredible technical officials and the chair of the technical committee for BOSS, but you're also a parent, not only to two racers, but one of whom is neurodivergent. So I'd really like a chance to kind of speak to you about both of those things. But before we go into too much, do you want to give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and what you're involved in?
Yeah, so I predominantly chair the Technical Officials Development Committee and have been doing that for quite a few years now. That for me comes from racing as a community member for a long time and very much being involved with officiating from an athletics perspective as well. So some people know that I do a lot with athletics. And cross country and road races. So I've sort of got that background as well that comes into it. So that came from that. I also sit on other parts. So Youth Development Committee, I sit on as well, and also on the Licensing Committee. So I've recently joined the Ninja Technical Committee as well to try and just bring together a few of the areas that I've got experience in. I do take a step back from those roles. So I'm not on the chief or the chair of any of those, and my main focus is obviously the development of the technical officials and how we progress that to be the best in the world is what our objective is for that committee.
Absolutely, and I think the UK sort of technical committees and officials are really seen sort of quite high up in the hierarchy internationally, aren't we? Really, in terms of standards.
Yeah, definitely. We've sort of taken it upon ourselves to really progress where we want to be. We obviously follow the guidelines that are set by World Obstacle with regard to their structure of the technical officials and how you move through the levels. But it's very important to us in the UK that it works for the UK. So not everyone will go international and work international. So as much as we want to strive everyone to become international officials, for many people, that's just not what they want to do. So it's got to work in the UK as well. And we've got to make sure we've got an amazing pool of officials who are competent and confident to become the head officials at UK races. So I do focus a lot on progressing people if they want to move internationally and giving them those opportunities, but also being aware of the different levels. And some people are just really happy not taking on that responsibility. And it's so important to work with those individuals as well and not feel like we're leaving them behind at all, because everyone is really important at that race and they all play a really key role.
Yeah, and I guess it's the same as races. You're going to have those racers who want to just go and complete races and, have multiple attempts at obstacles, or might want to be able to walk around obstacles that aren't competitive. And then you have those who want to be world champions, and competing internationally. I guess I've never really thought about that marshals and TOs, want that opportunity to have the whole breadth of experience across all races.
Yeah, definitely. And I got the opportunity in Belgium at the World Championships last year to be the chief technical official for the short course, which was, an amazing opportunity to be asked to do that role. And that's very important to me and my progression to be able to take on those roles and be recognised as a top level official across the world. But I want to bring all that learning that I take from those events and bring them back and share that experience with our UK officials and make things better. So a lot of my work is taking things in, listening, thinking about how we can adapt things, and then pushing that forward. I also use my athletics experiences of things I learn in athletics about what things we can do as well, and listen to other sports of what else is going on in other sports too. So I think we're at a great opportunity that we can use all this knowledge and that we've got around us and really shape what we want to be. We've had I've had requests from Sweden, we've had requests from Canada officials as well, to ask us how we model our development. So it's really nice that other countries are recognising the level of officials we've got and how good we are. And I feel quite proud that I'm part of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's so much stuff that goes on. I don't think probably the community appreciates maybe how much you do, and obviously those around you, as to bringing up the sport and to bringing in those, being at that high standard. I think I saw online, correct me if I'm wrong, that you also were part of the recent junior para champs. Is that right? From English athletics.
Yeah, so I, as part of my athletics role, so within athletics, I'm what was classified as a sort of mid to low level official.
Okay.
I have desires to get to level 4, which is a top. So I'm currently level 2 in a couple of disciplines.
Okay.
And it's really great because I've got some great mentors in athletics who are really pushing me on. But I was working in the call room. So for those of you that know about athletics, before your event, you go into call room, and at England Athletics, British Athletics World Championships level, you have your bag checked, you have your spikes checked, you have your, for example, wheelchairs and walkers checked to check they are within the right requirements of the sport, the wheels are the right height, that sort of thing. So I worked in the call room, and I got to work on ambulant races. So we had 400 ambulant, we had the frame running races, we had several wheelchair races as well. And it was just amazing to actually see how we adapt races to different people. I was chatting to some of the parents about just the logistics of getting the cost of a frame around the world, and it was just really lovely at how passionate these parents and these young people are in that sport. And when there's an event on, they will do every event they can to get themselves out there and to get that sport recognized. And as an official, it makes your day when you've got athletes who really want to be there. And it was absolutely a privilege, I have to say, to stick stickers on some of the top wheelchair racers, on their helmets. And, you feel a bit starstruck sometimes. And I said goodbye to Katrina Johnson-Thompson, and I was like, oh, bye. And you feel a bit like, a bit starstruck as an official, but you have to be professional. But it's really, really lovely to be able to walk onto that track and just watch and be part of it. And that's why we're going to see the Paralympics when we're in France. And, I'm really excited about watching wheelchair basketball, something I've never seen, but I think it's a bit brutal as well. Yeah. So we're going to be cheering on Team GB, ladies and men, in one of their qualifying rounds in Paris at the end of the month. So, that's...
So I'm so jealous. I'm going next weekend, but I'm not seeing any events. I'm going to run an event myself. So I'm very, very jealous. If you look now, obviously, what the event you've just described is very different to obstacle racing.
Yeah.
You've got, I don't know how many junior athletes attended that event, but I'm assuming quite a few, right? And if we compare that to the amount of para races we've got in the UK, obviously it's hugely different. And if you look at the age, also it's very different. Juniors versus our seniors. What would you say, apart from those two factors, is the difference between those sort of athletics, para athletes, and our obstacle racers?
Yeah, I think the main thing I see is just awareness of the sport is a really huge thing. I think most people at school will know about athletics. It's at the Olympics, it's at the Paralympics. You can't miss it. You look at Paris now and it's a great time. It's at the Stade de France, it's at the big stadium, it's televised, it's huge, about it. Or you might know someone who knows someone who tells you about it and you get invited to a club. And I just think with obstacle racing, we just haven't quite captured the inspiration of those young people to know that they can do this. And I've realised from, you know, working with a lot of these young people, and we had some neurodivergent athletes as well, the coaches and the parents are so key to getting them involved, because without the parents, how can they get to those events? You know, how can they buy the equipment that they need? And I just think it's finding that market. Now, I don't know where it is, and I don't know, that's a challenge for you to think about, Jamie, but you know, it's probably a bit like we have with the youth. Where do we find the youth to come into OCR? But it's the same. Where do we find those young people who might not engage in traditional sports, but would love to try this? And it's just capturing that inspiration in those minds, I think. Every time I'm at a race, I often talk to the parents. Oh, do you know I do this? Do you know I do this? So I throw it in slightly, but I have to be really careful that, you know, I'm not taking this 400-meter runner who's really committed to 400 meters. I've never thought about obstacle racing. But, you know, I talk about it at junior athletics meetings all the time. And I just think, because there might be a child who isn't quite enjoying track running. But they might think, oh, I could try. I love gymnastics. I love this. And maybe they could, you know, move into it. So, yeah, maybe we could all rock up at loads of athletics events and promote ourselves. I don't know how we can do it, but, you know.
But I think that's the beauty of juniors and obstacle racing, is that, you know, if you're a junior who is a good runner, but maybe not on the top of the podium every time, but you're a good runner, or is a good gymnast, or is good at rugby, and, you know, is really strong. The obstacle racing brings into all of those components, doesn't it? So you don't need to be 100% at every single sport, but we want people who love playing around and having fun, and, you know, are strong, and that's the beauty of it. So I think maybe I'll have to come up to the next para chance to see if I can
some of our
recruit some.
paras do like long jump, and they'll do field and track as well. So they're not really focused on one particular, you know, event, like maybe some of the sort of our non-para athletes would. They're very much all rounders, because they just want to go out and enjoy themselves and get in there, you know, enjoy what they're doing. So I think we could have a team tag down at the athletics, and
amazing. That would be awesome. That's next on the agenda. Absolutely. So from a kind of pure obstacle racing standpoint, now obviously with you being the chief technical official, is that right, for Belgium?
Yes.
I said yes. Okay, cool. So we were talking before the podcast. There's so many different terms as to what it was. That obviously encompassed the para race as well.
Yeah.
So what, from your perspective, I mean, well, I write the rules for the para race, and it's, would you say that it was your position to then share those rules across the other technical officials? Where's your positioning with that? And
so I mean, I definitely, with the adaptations to the rules, it's something that as officials we need that guidance on. And I think we've noticed even over the last sort of few months is the differences. We said when, you know, Belgium, all the different adaptive categories were sort of as one, weren't they? And actually you've got one rule, but it could be for different disabilities. So therefore it's that guidance on actually how does this relate to the individual running towards us, as it were. And that's where we need the support from people like yourselves to say, actually, we need to think about this. Once that's been obviously written and like tested in a way, it's really important that the officials read that and they understand what it says. And it's the same for all rules, is the official has to understand, if an athlete appears, what am I watching for on that obstacle? So when a para athlete comes through, what are my adaptations that I need to know so that I can fairly judge this athlete and this obstacle? And if we get it wrong or they don't understand it, that's where major problems will happen, because you know, someone might be given a penalty or have a ban cut when actually it was because the rule wasn't applied correctly. So and I always think it's more, you know, we talk about athletes knowing the rules, but I think it's more important as well in the para races that the athletes know the rules themselves and can question the officials, because I will openly admit that we do make errors. We don't want to make errors, but we're all human. And and I think as we go further into this sport, we're not going to notice the obvious adaptation that we're looking for. I mean, we often, we giggled about the British Championships and people shouting "para" when they ran towards you, and that could be because you can't see, as someone's coming towards you, what you're actually looking for. So it's those things that are really key, being able to identify the right people and what the adaptations are, but making sure that we know and question that rule. So before a race, if we're not sure, we need to question, what exactly am I looking for, and make sure that we've got it correct. And I think that's a massive thing for us. But also, I think on being able to make adaptations on the day. We had it with the British champs, I think, with the chain carry. Hopefully Harry won't mind, but we were sort of questioning, is this achievable for because of that carry? And it's actually okay at that point in time. Do we need to make an adaptation to make it fair on the athlete? And that's really important, that a technical official can recognise. I think there may be maybe something we need to do, and then relay that up to the team, the chief technical official, so they can make a decision at that point in time and agree it. So we're always changing, we're learning all the time, and things that we don't think about, suddenly you're like, never thought about that. Right, we need to make that our learning for next time. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's strange with para adaptations, because it's that trade-off between, are you not able to do this because of a disability, or are you not able to do this because of fitness level? And it's that clear distinction that needs to be made. But also, it's, I can do this as a para athlete, however, it's not medically safe for me to do. So I can carry a really heavy weight. However, if I'm going to carry a really heavy weight over really, really uneven terrain where I've got a real risk of falling over, is that realistic to do? Or we've got a chap who wants to compete internationally, and he has a through shoulder amputation, so he has no arm whatsoever on one side. So how it should work, or how it has previously worked with upper limb impairments, is if it comes to an upper limb obstacle, such as a 4-Ros rig or firefighters or something like that, if you have an upper limb impairment, you have to use your non-impaired side on the monkey bar or attachment, whatever the obstacle is, and then your impaired side you can basically use however you like. So you can touch it on the monkey bars, you can wrap it around the structure, whatever it is that you need to get through. However, that works on the basis that you have another limb to use, whether that's an elbow or an armpit or whatever it is. Whereas this chap has nothing at all on that side. So of course, how do you then create adaptations? And similar to you said, how do you identify those athletes? Because as someone with a running blade, yes, you could say it's quite obvious, but the amount of TOs that don't pick up that I have a running blade, maybe because I run at a faster pace and I don't think I limp as much. So it's that trade-off of, do you want a big vest that says I'm a para athlete, or do you not want a big vest and you just then go on the fact that TOs aren't going to pick it up?
And that's a trade-off with the whole inclusion, isn't it? Inclusion, but we're putting you in a big bright orange vest so everybody knows. And it's that whole, like, is that inclusion or is that actually exclusion? I have a real big, I suppose I have a real big thing about what is right and what is wrong in those situations. And it's something that I think will be a learning curve over time of how we identify it. And because, and it's also, I think it's also putting people in a, like you said, people might not notice your running blade because you're running at such high speed and going over those obstacles. And I think people would be, if a new TO who didn't know you would probably be quite embarrassed if they hadn't noticed. But it's not, but it's fine. It's absolutely fine, because but it's just the best way that we know. I mean, we often send pictures of people through the group chats as well. So if we like, you know, I think we've took a picture of you at the beginning of a race once to say, guys, these people appear. These are our para athletes, or this person hasn't got a headband on, but it's round their neck. So we send pictures through the group chats. And again, that's just to make people be aware of who they're looking for, but without making things really, really obvious. So, you know, we're trying to make things easier for people and prevent that whole, oh, sorry, you're a para. Oh, sorry, you need to start it again. And like, cause problems in the middle of someone's race when you're quite focused, or you know your competitor might be behind you. We don't want to put those blockages in, but that's an additional thing that we think about.
And it's at the moment all the para athletes are quite far apart from one another. You know, we look at the British Championships, elite men, when they're literally toing and throwing, one person's in front and they take a penalty, the other person's in front, and para racers at the moment aren't like that. You have a little bit at the front, but you know, you might have a para racer and then 7 minutes later another para racer. So, you know, if you as a TO said, oh, sorry, you've got to do that again, or you get distracted and, you know, it isn't really impacting the race that much at this stage. But what we really want is that kind of real fight and everybody up close and, you know, the real spectator sport.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But I think we're getting there because, you know, for the Euros and for the Worlds, we have the little para band where everybody has just a band with their number on it. We have para on it, or adaptive. So that's really good. But it is really, really tricky. And to know what applies to everybody. I think you're right that the emphasis needs to be on the athletes for what they can and what they can't do. And, you know, I make the rules, but of course I make the rules based on pictures. And then I turn up to the course and they go, well, that setup is slightly different. That needs to be doing. So, you know, for the World Championships in a couple of weeks' time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the whole course, walk the whole course and say, right, this is stand at the obstacle and say, is this realistic or is this a good adaptation? But you've got language barriers on top of that, trying to add that in. It is really tricky. And then of course you've got those with invisible disabilities and those who are adaptive in the general sense of the word who aren't classifiable. You know, such as people with, you know, different disabilities, or, you know, a slight vision impairment that doesn't meet classification, or who are kind of neurodiverse. That's a whole different ball game. And I know I think it was last year we also spoke about some adaptations for those with neurodiversity. See, at the moment, those with any neurodiversity aren't classifiable. I'd like to think maybe in the future, you know, if we get enough athletes that we could have a sort of classification for that. Is that something that you think would be a good idea long term?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's really hard. And I'm going to speak very honestly as a parent of a neurodiverse child as well now, is that you can look at Josh, and if you catch him on a good day, you wouldn't know that there was any neurodiverse, any registered disability. Now, to get the diagnosis is a really, really hard and very, very long process. Now, I work in mental health services now. I've been working in it for the last few months, and I don't work on the same service that my son's in, and we're in a different area. But I thought it would be quite difficult for me as a parent going through the process that a lot of those parents go through. But I just appreciate now just how difficult the services are and how hard it is on families. So, you know, my job at the moment is really important because I'm able to just understand and I get it a little bit. So, but going back to Josh, so to get the diagnosis, you know, he was identified at primary school in nursery that there was maybe some behavior issues, but because Josh is quite bright and intelligent, and he was basically just classified as the naughty child in class for a long time. Playful, bit boisterous, you know, doesn't really concentrate, never made eye contact with any teachers. So this went on for years and years and years, many investigations, people watching him in class. things in my personal life and his personal life, such as a marriage breakdown and separation of his parents, that were, it's because of that. It's because of that, you know. Eventually, he was given a referral to CAMS at the age of 8. He finally had a diagnosis at the age of 11. So if you can imagine, this is a long time. So as a very sporty parent, I used to work in sports development before I moved to the NHS. I couldn't understand why my child didn't enjoy classic sports. Why couldn't he get on in football and rugby? Why at rugby camp was he constantly stroking the child's hair in front or stroking their coat? Why was he annoying the other kids? And so we never did traditional sports because he just doesn't get on in a team environment. He excelled in kickboxing, very much him and himself. So, you know, so as a parent, you're wondering why is my child not, you know, why is he not really engaging in what other kids are doing? So he obviously got diagnosed. So Josh is diagnosed with autism. So you might hear ASD, autistic spectrum disorder. He's also diagnosed with ADHD. So the ADHD was a first diagnosis. So that's, oh my God, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. But I forget sometimes what they are. And you can have different classifications with an ADHD. Some are hyperactive, some aren't. He also has borderline ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder. So that's about rules and regulations. So he's not so bad now. He's a teenager, but as a youngster, just wouldn't obey the rules. And then also you have little add-ons to autism and ADHD. So a little bit of Tourette's. We have some dyspraxia as well. So anyone that knows a bit about dyspraxia, it's a bit of a coordination thing. So you might look at his running style and it's not particularly pretty because that's part of his dyspraxia coming in and his catching. And then not quite dyslexic, but there's dyslexic tendencies and he's got hypermobile hands. So, you know, you wouldn't notice any of that unless you knew Josh's complete diagnosis, because actually he just looks like a typical teenage boy to people. So, and that's really, I think that's really key, is there's adults out there, there's neurodiverse adults and neurodiverse children who are racing, but you can't see the disability. It's not obvious. And they might be racing against another child. And, you know, you don't know the troubles or the struggles that that one child has got through to get onto that event, and you may not understand how hard it is because they don't train as much, because like for Josh, he's not focused to go and train. He trains when he wants to train, and if he doesn't want to train, it's an absolute battle to get in there. A lot of the things are on his terms as well. So, you know, and I'm not saying this is the same for everybody. This is what I go through. There are other children who are neurodiverse, who are currently racing and competing, and they have completely different sort of tics and ways that they come across as well. So, you know, I'm not saying that this is really important, that this is not the same for everybody. This is very much my personal experience with Josh and Josh's experience. And just that is key, that it could be, you know, how can you classify neurodiverse individuals when everything could be completely different? You know, something like not wanting to wear a headband around their head because they don't like the feel of it, or they're not comfortable with something around their head. Josh was like that a few years ago. Now he's obsessed with wearing a headband because he's got longer hair. So it changes, things change so quickly. I've battled with him to get out of the car because he's not in the mood, or he's tired, or he's just generally doesn't want to be there. Once he starts, he's happy as Larry and in his own. But sometimes to get him on the start line is an absolute, you know, a battle for me. And especially if I'm TOing as well. Sometimes I'm like, pulling my hair out, like, you've got to do this. And I sometimes think, God, parents must think I'm the worst parent in the world. But unfortunately, I have to be a little bit tough with him. Otherwise, he'd get away with it and then we'd never do anything. So, you know, that's my way of coping. So I apologise to anyone if they've ever seen me have an argument with my child at a race. Please know we're all fine and we're very happy afterwards. It's just our way of getting through that moment.
That's it, isn't it? That's your way. I think a lot lot of people think about adaptive races, and I'm talking about, you know, all adaptations.
Yeah.
And they see people in a racing environment and they go, oh, this guy's missing a leg. He needs this. This guy's missing an arm. He needs this. This guy's blind. He needs this. This guy, you know, has autism and he needs this. But actually, there are really 4 stages of racing, aren't there? There's the training, the preparation to get up to them. You know, it's the, I can't wear my leg for a week because I've got a blister, or I'm not in the mood to go training, or I'm not in the right headspace to go training, or I need to get a taxi every time because I'm visually impaired to get to training. There's actually getting to that race in the first place. You know, we talk about huge financial barriers of people with adaptations. You know, you spoke about the frames before, especially in obstacle racing, because if you require any equipment whatsoever, it's going to get muddy, it's going to get probably broken, or it's going to get scratched up. That stuff is, you know, it's not running 100 meters down a track where it's really nice and clean, and you know, you probably need to give it a bit of a wipe between races. No, it's not at all. So then you've got,
and to add to that, from a neurodivergent perspective as well, are the trainers the right color?
Yep.
Because I get that a lot. Is the fabric of this top, I don't like this fabric, I'm not wearing it. I don't like these shorts. And I know it's as simple as just put the shorts on. But when my autistic son is very much adamant that he's not wearing that colour shorts because he doesn't like it,
yeah,
that then causes an argument, which then causes a meltdown. And something as silly as the colour of a tick on trainers has caused arguments in our house. So yeah, I just put the trainers on because they're comfortable, but no, but he wouldn't. So yeah, add that in as well.
yeah, completely. Things that, you know, a lot of us just wouldn't think about. We might think, oh, you know, the new GB kit looks like this, or I like it, I don't like it, but there's so many more components on there. Then you've got obviously the race itself, where, you know, I'm a teacher. I have lots of experience working with neurodiversity, and I would think about things like the crowds, the noise, start line experience, the rule book sharing beforehand, you know, all of that sort of stuff as part of the race. And then you've also got after the race. You know, I know a lot of people with neurodiversity, when you add tiredness, you know, fatigue into the mix, you then are dealing with almost a completely different person. So out of those 4 kind of components, which bit do you think is the hardest for you as a parent, and the hardest sort of for Josh, do you think?
I think as we've grown and been more involved in it, I think we're getting better with the training side of things. I think because he's enjoying it, he sees more importance of things. We tend to have quite a set schedule, so we do Ninja Warrior Mondays at 6 o'clock, because it's quiet. There's honestly, Ninja Warrior at 6 o'clock in Walsall is brilliant. There's very few people, and there's not very many kids running around, which he gets annoyed when a child doesn't go the right way on it, because he wants to go the right way on the obstacle. So we do Ninja Warrior Monday at 6. That's in our schedule. We try and schedule things in so it's, you know, it's regular. So from September we're going over to a like a bit of a pentathlon club over not far away from us to do some laser shooting. They do some fitness on a Thursday. So again, that's adding that schedule in, but I have to make sure we have rest days in between, so that, for example, with Josh, he comes home from school and he's absolutely exhausted because he's on medication during school time to focus on his energy and his concentration. His tablets only last during school time. So by 3 o'clock, his tablets are wearing off. He doesn't take any extra medication. He only takes it during school hours. So then he's exhausted. He's concentrated at school. He's tried to abide by the rules. He's tried not to get in trouble. He's tried not to shout. He's tried to concentrate, you know, do all the things. He's tried not to get his phone out. So he comes home from school and he's exhausted. He doesn't talk to me for a few hours because he doesn't want to talk about anything. So then I have to make sure then, okay, we'll go at 6 o'clock. So he's got time to recover. Then I wouldn't do anything the next day because I'm trying to make sure that he's in the right mindset for it. So it's very much planning what we're going to do, and giving advance notice. So if we say, right, we're going to go to somewhere, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it on this day. Usually before we go, I get the argument, I don't want to go, I don't want to be there. And once he's there, he's fine. So, that's taken time to get to. But I think from what you said is getting on the start line has got easier as well. But it's making sure there's a safe space afterwards for him. So he's raced, he's tired, he's hungry, he's grumpy. He's also a teenager. He's 14, almost 15.
Yeah.
We've got those hormones running wild as well. So, I mean, the good thing is for me is finding somewhere that's shaded, that's cool, that he can sit down and have a drink. He can get his phone and he can literally just ignore people because he wants to just be on his own. That's great with the races is Josh has a blue badge because of his ADHD. So he can go and sit in the van and just have some time on his own and just be on his own. And he doesn't make friends particularly easily. So he doesn't often want to sit and play with all the other youngsters because he just needs to have some time on his own, and then he'll come back out of his shell. And I think it's really important to recognise that with those athletes and at the start line, that they might not want to stand at the front and all the pushing and shoving and trying to get on the front. That's not how they react. And they might not like the crowds. They might not like the loudspeakers, but being aware of that and, and if there's a parent out there or an adult out there who wants to let boss know that this is something that they struggle with, please do. And we can make those adaptations. But it's very much, if we don't know, we can't make those adaptations and we can't understand. And I'm very much the sunflower badge. When we go out, we're in crowds. Josh wears his lanyard because it makes people aware to just be a bit more tolerant if he's a bit fidgety or he's a bit restless about something. And it's that awareness, isn't it, of that there are neurodiverse races, and we've just got to be mindful of it and think about how we do things, and a bit like explaining the rules to someone. Do they understand the rules? With the youngsters, we were talking about it in Belgium, is actually if a international official says no, does that youngster understand what's being said to them? Do they actually need a parent or coach to say, that's okay, carry on? So it's not like that individual is coaching the youngster on the obstacle. They're almost there as a sort of a go-between to ensure the athlete understands what's been said. And I think it's those things we haven't quite got yet, because I don't think neurodiversity is, I don't know how big it is internationally. I think in the UK we're really on it with our sunflower badge, but I think when we go to international races, I'm not sure whether autism is generally understood and what the adaptations
or
are.
respected.
I
think absolutely. As you were talking just then, I was thinking, because am I right in thinking Josh races the adult course most of the time now?
So he's 14, so Spartan, he now goes into the adult course.
Okay, because I was thinking, obviously you'd have to ask him, and everybody is different and whether they would want this, but whenever we have a para race, it might be a case that those who are neurodiverse have the option to race in the para race, still competing against the people that they would compete against anyway, their age group, but actually just in terms of getting to the start line, less crowds, because there are often only 10-15 races, para races at most, and the waves are much smaller. Do you think that's something that Josh would want to do?
I mean, I'm not sure whether, because Josh is already racing them already, he's sort of got used to it, but I think it's really important for other athletes that may be wary about starting, is that could be an option to get them. I think a lot of it, and I mean, I am not autistic or neurodiverse myself, or I've not been diagnosed. I could be, who knows? But it's actually getting the individual to say what would work for them and what doesn't work. So, if a new athlete came in and said, "But I just don't like the crowds, I don't like the pushing and the shoving," it's whether they start off in that group to get them confident to then take part, and once they're confident and happy, it's then that progression through, and until we have those categories already set out in races, we have to put people in their age groups, don't we? And it's making it fair for them. But think about the whole Spartan and, you know, females having a go in August. It could be the same, you know, thing about actually, you know, have you got a disability? Would you like to come and have a go? And actually getting people to try it and experience it. And I think a lot of it is that other thing of that's someone who's like me, you know. So if you know, another neurodiverse athlete saw Josh with a lanyard on racing, they might be like, oh, that he's like me. You know, we're not the same, but we're on the same level, as it were. And I think it's that, you know, I use social media platforms to promote the neurodiversity of my child, because I want people out there to know that I can do that as well. And you know, and use him as this is good, you know, a bit like you're doing with the para. You know, we're going out there, we're promoting, but it's just letting people know that you can do it, and it's okay to be neurodiverse as well. And we understand, and we will help you as much as we can.
Completely. It's about visual representation, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if you have an invisible disability or adaptation, that then has an added thing. So what I would say is, you know, if anybody is neurodiverse or has any additional requirements, you know, and wants to race, you know, please just get in touch, because we know the people to see how we can, you know, work around that. There's always a way around something. There's always a way to support someone throughout a race. And I think that's maybe a misconception in the community is, you know, if you're racing an age group, Spartan, for example, and you have an adaptation, whether it be you just need a different start line or something just slightly different, actually, I really think that Spartan would be open to doing that for the odd person. You know, we want to include people. We want to make sure that everyone has the same opportunities to race without giving anyone a competitive advantage. And, you know, letting someone go 5 minutes after the rest of the wave, it's not really that, you know, different, is it, in terms of logistics? Is there anything that you think we kind of haven't really covered in terms of para? I mean, there's loads of stuff we could talk about with para races. I think the rules are always changing.
Yeah,
you know, they are. It's such a new sport, and even for the world champs, it's changing. And I think as we get more data, it's going to be really interesting to see how we do. World champs will be a big test. We've got two Costa Rican athletes, actually. One who's missing his full arm, and the other one I don't know of his disability yet. But it'd be really interesting to see how they do, and, you know, what is the time difference between, you know, an athlete who's missing a hand versus missing a whole arm. Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm gutted that you're not going to be out there.
I know. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
We're in France. We're watching the Paralympics. I'm sorry. You know, we've got to weigh it up, haven't we? But yeah, definitely. And it's because we don't have that. We don't have anything to compare against. We generally. You think you look at it and you go, I generally don't know. Like, without watching an athlete on an obstacle, you can't predict how the differences and the adaptations can be. And you know, I think we're really at a great place to learn from that. And, you know, I'm not saying that we're going to get it right completely. You know, it's never going to be perfect. And at the moment, it's getting, until we've got this group of individuals to see and compare and see what those differences are and really work with those adaptations, then I am excited. I'm not going to be there, but I'd love to see those changes, because I think it's amazing when you get someone on an obstacle and you just think, oh my God, how do they do that? And how is that done? But then you look at someone who's trained to do that and someone new coming into the sport, and that's, again, a completely ball game, because you've got someone who's practiced one obstacle in a type way to know how they can do it, and someone who might be coming in new and go, oh, I need to look at this for 5 minutes and work out how I'm going to get across this. And, you know, that's just as important as a learning from.
And that's actually a real challenge, because, you know, you look at people with the same impairment, and you go, okay, well they're similarly impaired, therefore they should be able to complete the obstacle exactly the same way. No, they don't at all. And it's that trade-off between, is it your ability because of your disability, or is it your ability because of your physical ability in terms of fitness and strength, etc.? I think sometimes I competed against this guy in a different sport. I don't want to say which sport, otherwise you can tell me from that is. He said to me at the end of the race, he said, if I was younger, fitter and stronger, I would have beat you. Okay. You mean if you're a completely different person? Yeah, you would. Yeah, you would have. And that guy actually was more physically able-bodied than I am. But he almost found any excuse to kind of go, oh, well, I'm more disabled than you. And I was like, well, actually, you know what? I train 10 times a week. I do all this work. It makes sense that I'm, at a fast pace. I think we'll find any excuse that we can. As we get more athletes come through the woodwork, I think it's going to be great to see how we can compare. And I think the moment for the world champs, for those of you who know or you don't know, the para athletes get given 5 bands. That's always been the rule. And then for the team race, it's going to be upper limb versus upper limb and lower limb versus lower limb. However, what I'm looking to do is actually, if you've got an upper limb versus a guy who's missing a couple of fingers versus a guy who's missing an arm, those two guys are completely different ability-wise. So what we're going to do is, I need to work out the exact amount based when the rule book comes out, is we're going to give the guy who has a significantly higher impairment more bands and give the other guy far less bands. And that will then hopefully even it out a bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at how many obstacles realistically you can do with one arm versus how you can do with 2 arms. So that's kind of in the woodwork, but we'll see.
Yeah. And I mean, and that is that, just knowing that again. So then you've got a technical official who is then looking out for different adaptations, different number of bands, what the teams are. And there's so, and I think just, for anyone, any athletes or marshals or anything, just the whole logistics and the thinking to do that is so much outside of the actual race. So much work goes into this planning and this thinking to make sure that a race can go ahead and it's competitive and it's good and it's interesting. I just don't think people appreciate like how much work goes in from yourself, but then from the officials and the technical delegates who are at that race to know, to get the understanding. And it's a lot of, for a new sport, there's so much going on to make sure it's spot on and correct
but it's how much work can we put in now to make it easier for the day. You don't want on race day to be going, oh, we're going to change this rule and we're going to do this, and we're going to brief all these people and all this sort of stuff. You want all of this work in place so that a TO knows, I know that if this type of athlete comes, they do this. If this type of athlete comes, if they do this. That's as simple as we want it. How do we make it as simple as possible? And I think Boss is looking to make a rule book which is basically the same for every race. So if you have a balance beam, you start at this point and you end on this point. Not if you start at this point, then you put a foot here and then you can jump. No, let's be consistent. And then with that, you'll have the para rules that run across it, so that you can literally go, oh, it's a balance beam, right? Every para athlete with a lower leg impairment can do this, or with this. That's the plan.
No, and that is a really good plan, because you know when you're going into it that there's not any not ridiculous, but you must cross this line and you cannot touch this with your hand, and it's those little changes that
if it looks like this angle, then,
just make it harder for everybody.
My last podcast, we were talking about where we want the sport to go, and I was saying, do I want it to be an Olympic sport? Yes, but I also love racing, because obstacle racing, because it's not the same every single time and it's not consistent. But I think what does need to happen is the consistency of the rules and the consistency of adaptive adaptive roles. Yeah, and I think we're getting there.
Yeah,
We're definitely getting there.
definitely.
Yeah. Cool. Right. Was there anything else that you feel?
Oh, I don't know. We've covered so much.
We have. I think we could keep talking forever. Yeah, definitely. Well, if there is nothing else, I would like to absolutely thank you so much for your participation. That sounds really. I don't really like that.
Very
Thank
official.
you.
Very official.
Thank you, madam, for joining us on this podcast. No, it's been really great. It's been really, really interesting. You know, obviously, you've got that dual aspect of your TO knowledge, your parent knowledge, neurodiversity knowledge. You know, it's been really, really fantastic to get your thoughts, your opinions, your every single thing on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on the second edition of Never Stumped, the Adaptive Athlete Podcast. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You've been listening to Never Stumped, the Adaptive OCR Podcast with Jamie Gane, and I'll catch you next time.